All right, so we've gone through a lot. We've done some modeling, we did some rigging, we went through a little bit of UV editing, but now I'm going to show you how to just get a little bit into animation. And the thing is, animation and character animation in particular is a huge field with lots of fundamentals to learn. So I'm just going to kind of give you a quick tour of Cinema 4D's user interface for animation, and we're going to do a quick walk cycle in just a very short amount of time using our new controllers. So what I like to do is just set up my interface for animation. So I'll go up to Window, make sure I have a timeline. F-curve is fine, but either one is fine because you can switch between them with this button right here. There's also this motion mode, which I don't ever use, and I've tried it a few times and it's not worked for me that well. So dope sheet and F-curve is really what you want. So we'll just do F-curve for now. We'll just set this up next to our animation. And this is going to be a timeline here at the top, just like what we have down here. This is just a quick overview of what we're looking at here. But if you add keyframes, which I want to make sure, by the way, that I have everything frozen. Okay. Freeze and freeze. Okay. Make sure before you start animating anything that your transformations are all frozen so that you can make sure that if you ever get anything a little bit too out of whack, you can bring it back to 0. On your PSR. But on the root, we're going to freeze this as well. And there's one more controller I want to add, which is her just move world controller. So I'm going to make a new null, and I'm going to press Option to put it inside of that, and I'm going to call this Mira world. There we go. So this is the controller that we can use to. Well, before I do that, let me back up a little bit. All right. So there's one more controller I want to add before I start animating, and that's just a world null controller. And I'll just make a new spline. Just be a big circle. We'll make it face the ground, just like that. This will just be a world. We'll just call it Mira world transform. And then we can make this root a child of that new null. So anytime we want to actually move this character, we can move her like this. And all the other controllers will be inside of that, right inside of this root right here. All right, so we're pretty much ready to go. To do a walk cycle, I'm going to start with the waist. So the waist is kind of the big central part of this, this body movement, and so everything else is just going to kind of follow that. When you're thinking about walk cycles, you think about how many frames it'll take to take a step, and in a lot of cases, in most cases, I try to do about 2 steps a second. And so if we're going on 24 frames per second, which we can check here, it's actually 30, so we're going to drop that down to 24. If you do a Command D, you'll bring up your project settings. You can change this to 24 frames per second. There we go. We're at 72 frames. We're just going to have I think a 1 second walk cycle here. It's not going to take us long to do. But once we start adding keyframes, we're going to see that these are going to populate inside of our F-curve menu. So on the waist control, let's get back to our waist, and we've got it on object mode. Right down here, you can see that you can add keyframes using this right here, which is a shortcut of F9, but I usually just click it, or I'll go to the actual coordinates menu here and I'll click on one of these, or I'll just grab a few and I'll add the keyframe that way. But what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure it's on position and rotation. In fact, let's just do just position for now. So for the first step, we're going to have her step to about right there. We'll hit a keyframe. Somehow that is adding way too much information. Okay, there we go. I'm going to back that up. So make sure that you're on, before you start animating, make sure you're on the object's coordinate system, not the world. Because if you do the world, if I drag this down, what you'll see is all of those numbers on the X, Y, and Z over here. Just watch these numbers move. If I drag this down, for some reason, even though it is a straight up and down movement, it's kind of slightly moving in the X and Z directions as well. And instead, what we want to do is just be on the object mode system. And then if I drag down, it just drags in the Y because those transformations are frozen. So If you have it frozen and there's no kind of weird gimbal stuff going on where there's rotations off, then if you're on the object mode system, you should be able to drag up and down. So first keyframe we're going to make is we'll do her first step keyframe right here. So then we can just do G on our keyboard to skip forward 6 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll go to the 6th frame here. And we'll go back to about right there for her passing pose. And then we'll just copy that keyframe back over. So what's going on here? Basically, we have our timeline set to automatic mode right here, which makes it so that whenever we click on the controller that we want to animate, it will show up in our timeline view, and it'll give us all of the coordinates, anything that we've animated so far, which we've only animated the position, but even the X and Z have keyframes on them because we just did it using this keyframe button, record the active objects and record the position. So you can actually turn these on and off for recording if you're working on it right now. But what we're going to do is we're actually just going to even go to the dope sheet view. Navigating this timeline window is just like navigating your Cinema 4D camera in your viewport. You can just zoom out by holding your Option key on your keyboard and right-clicking and dragging. You can use your middle mouse button to pan, and then you can use, there is no rotation on this or orbit, so all you would need to do is usually zoom in and out using your right mouse button or your middle mouse button to move around. Same thing with the F-curves. What you can do is zoom in closer. If you can't see your keyframes, you can use a couple of keys up here. This one will frame all, or you can use the frame selected, which I didn't have any selected, but if I did this and I did a frame selected, you can actually even type S on your keyboard just like you could inside of this, inside of this view. If I just did frame selected, it would bring it straight up into the camera. The same thing in your timeline. So use S a lot if you're in this timeline view, or just do a little zoom like this. You can just kind of Option, hold your right mouse button, and it'll go in and out like this. So we've got this keyframe now. I'm just going to move up to frame 12, and I'm going to copy this keyframe here and paste it right here. So now we've already got one step done. I'm going to copy these, and let's just paste it over here. So now that we have this, I'm just going to delete the X and Z keyframes. We don't need them. Might be good to just set one actually at the beginning, just so that if it moves out of place, it'll always snap back to that. But that's just generally what I like to do. So for this Y position, we're going to do a little bit of tweaking on these curves. So if you're thinking about a walk cycle, it's a little bit heavier on the step, not too heavy though, because we do want her to kind of like step into these knees. She's got huge long limbs, so whenever she steps, those knees are going to take a lot of pressure off of that waist. And so we want her to do a little bit more of a smooth down, not just be like a bouncing ball that just pop, pop, pop. But we do want her to kind of have a long upper curve to whenever she comes up. So, and it looks like the up is in the opposite direction, which is okay. We can still work with that. So what we can do is we can hold Shift while we're dragging. Actually, that doesn't do what we want it to. What we want to do is just kind of drag these out to give it a little bit more length at the top of the curve. Okay, so if you have these tangents pulled out like this, but you can do them both at the same time at the same length, and you're not sure whether it's actually straight, what you can do to zero that out is just tap the 0 key on your keyboard, and that'll just zero that out. So let's just watch this. We're going to reduce our timeline view here to be about 24, so I can watch this. Okay, so it's going one extra frame because I didn't quite drag it far enough. But that step is going to be okay, I think. Then what you can do is you can actually select all these keys, or even just this track right here, go up to Functions, do Track After, and we can do a Repeat After. So right down here, we have this showing up and asks how many times we want it to repeat. We kind of just want it to keep going forever and ever. So we're going to do, let's just make it 90 repetitions. So now we have a cycle. Let's just keep going. We're going to do a couple more things. Let's start with our feet. So this is our first step. And for this one, I do want to use the world transform because it is going to move forward, backward in space at a perfect Z. So what I'll do is I'll just drag this forward like this. And I'm going to rotate up. This will be her first step. And I'm going to drag it all the way back to where she makes her second step. It looks like that pole vector is following in the wrong direction, so we'll fix that here in the next bit. That left hip pole. Okay, I just want it to be pretty far out this direction. So we'll just leave that there. On this heel goal, we're going to have it rotate right here. We'll just have it rotate down back to its kind of normal position here. Zero. For some reason, it's back to 0 here. Okay, so we've done 1, 2, 3 keyframes here, and then we can just have it go back to the beginning. So we'll just make sure we're just on the left heel goal here. Position and rotation. We'll frame all by pressing H. And the position and rotation are right here. So we can actually just we can command drag these right along the timeline, and it'll go right back to that first one. But we want it to have a little bit of a passing pose. So let's drag this up like this. This is going to be really strange with her long limbs, but here we go. Let's just add a little passing pose right here at the frame 18 mark. So there we go. Got ourselves a nice little walk going on now. I'll reduce this down to 24. There we go. All right, so now we're going to do the other foot. Whoops. The right heel goal. Same thing's happening with that hip pole, so we'll just move it out. It's much further out. Long, long steps. Give it about right here. And then we'll just keep that keyframe the same. And at the frame 6 mark, we'll just have her come up. We'll bring this up as a passing pose. Maybe we'll just reduce the amount of height that the other one comes up as well. We'll go back to this skull here. Make it not quite as dramatic when she pulls that up. So let's just watch this for now. We'll just see what it looks like. So it's not perfect yet. We do have some work we can do on this. So let's make sure that these are actually cycling. The way I'm going to do that is by, actually I don't know if I rotated these back yet. So this right heel needs to kind of rotate out before she steps. Oops. Right there. Just add a rotation keyframe there. And right there, it looks like I had both position and rotation happening. So I'd rather actually just have had rotation. Let me just go into that goal. And we're going to open up the rotation keyframes. You see how each thing that I click on over here in this timeline will just automatically populate right over here. There's a lot of different options you can choose. Like if you don't want to show all these tangents, you don't have to. But I'm going to reduce, I'm going to get rid of this rotation keyframe. I'm going to go to the P on this one. And I'm going to just kind of move it down this direction by holding Shift. So now it doesn't quite, it rolls back into that foot a little bit more. There we go. All right, so now what we can do is do the same thing we did to the others. where we created repetition. We're going to do this by going up to functions, do track after, and then we'll do a repeat after on all of these. That way everything we're going to be moving, so say we wanted to kind of like move this up and down the timeline, the cycle moves with it. So it's really nice to be able to do that inside of Cinema. So each one of these, I just need to make sure it says like 20 or 90 or whatever we had. The newest version of Cinema 4D actually has gotten rid of this. You can just continuously repeat. You don't have to actually type in the number of repetitions anymore. So it's good to know. And we need to do the same with this one. We'll go back into the timeline. Functions, track after, repeat. Looks like I'm able to do them all at once here, which is great. There we go. All right, let's see how that's looking. So right now, I'm not pleased with the fact that she just kind of like eases into these. So what I'm going to do is go into those F curves. I'm going to, for this Z, particularly this position, I'm going to kind of make this a little bit more linear on the ends. So all you have to do is come up here and go to linear, and linear here. It doesn't know, though, that it wants to. I'm going to just copy and paste these keyframes here. It still stays a cycle. It just makes it so that this middle one I can actually create a linear tangent out of. Maybe it's this one needs to be linear. There we go. So now she'll just move straight from this pose into the next, and we can actually turn this one into a spline. And get closer to these and just kind of adjust these with my eyeballs. Okay. Let's see how that works. This is the left heel that I just adjusted. So maybe it does need a little bit more curve into that, so I can go back to that F curve and we'll just do that real quick. So particularly it looks like this y-axis one is getting a little bit, I want this one to curve a little bit more. You can see how it's affecting the motion by getting closer to it. If I do this, it gives it a little bit more curve before she hits. I do want this to just kind of stay even to the ground. Okay. We'll make sure this one's easing as well. So now let's watch it. I'm going to make this 23. Just see if that loops a little bit better. Yeah, I think it does. It's going from 0 to 23 and then it loops back to the beginning. So that's why it's kind of adding that little bit of extra on it.